Sir, permission to prove a point. The words landed like a shot before the first round ever fired. The range at Fort Cassian went still. The wind, the murmurs, even the sand seemed to pause. Every head turned toward the voice, a young logistics cadet standing beside a rifle nearly her size, hair pulled back tight, eyes calm beneath the visor. Master Chief Rowan, the man every recruit whispered about, frowned. Cadet Vance. This is a 300-meter qualification line, not a classroom stunt. Yes, Master Chief, Aria replied evenly. But if we wait 30 more seconds, the wind pattern will break. A ripple of low laughter rolled across the line, one sergeant muttered. Listen to her. The wind's talking now. Aria didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, one hand steadying the Barrett MRAD, chambering a round with deliberate precision. She checked her data card. Wind 12 knots, full value from 3 o'clock. She adjusted scope elevation, murmuring under her breath. Hold 4. 8 right, add 0-2. The trigger broke clean. The 338 Norma round cut through the shimmering air, a streak of pressure and fire that disappeared into the horizon. 2 seconds later, clang. The steel target shuddered. A perfect hit dead center. Silence. Even the brass stopped talking. The only sound left was the flag snapping in the crosswind. Rowan blinked once, checking the monitor. Impact confirmed. Center plate. How in God's name Aria cycled the bolt and locked the rifle safe. Permission granted. Sir. No smirk, no swagger, just precision. And calm, someone finally whispered. Who trained her? Rowan watched her walk off the line, dust curling around her boots, every movement precise, practiced. Yet quiet. He'd seen arrogance before. This wasn't that. It was control. It was legacy. The officers began replaying the telemetry feed, murmuring disbelief. She adjusted before the gust even registered. One said, another added. She read the mirage bands by eye. Rowan said nothing. He was still watching her, the way she carried herself, the way she didn't look back. By the time the next shooter took position, the air had shifted again. No one spoke above a whisper. That night, alone in the barracks, Aria cleaned the MRAD piece-by-piece bolt, extractor, barrel, glass each motion silent and sure. When she finished, she sat still for a long moment, the desert wind pressing softly against the windows. Somewhere in that hush, a memory returned, not of orders, but of a voice, low and warm. The wind doesn't fight you. Sweetheart, it warns you. Aria smiled faintly, eyes half closed. The wind outside changed direction, and somewhere far across the dunes. The flag over Fort Cassian shifted too, as if the world itself had just taken notice. Where are you watching from? Soldier, subscribe and stand with the unit because some stories refuse to stay buried. By dawn, everyone at Fort Cassian had heard about the logistics cadet who broke the record. Rumors carried faster than the wind she'd read so perfectly. When Aria walked into the mess hall, conversation stopped, then restarted in whispers. Forks clattered, eyes followed. She moved like a shadow that everyone suddenly noticed. She sat alone, eating quietly until Specialist Torres slid into the seat across from her. You do realize, Torres said, that half the SEAL detachment spent last night trying to replicate your shot. Aria didn't look up. Then they learned something. Yeah. Torres grinned. They learned you're not normal, before Aria could answer. A voice boomed from the entrance. Cadet Vance, report to range control. Now? The room fell silent again. Range control was colder than she remembered. Steel walls, silent monitors, and Master Chief Rowan waiting beside a spread of rifles that looked like they'd been chosen for a test. Pick one, he said. She scanned the table and chose a mid-range platform, not the flashiest, but balanced. Rowan watched her movements carefully. You checked wind drift before elevation. Why? Because balance is the first truth, Aria replied. Wind always wins if you let it. He nodded once. Your father teach you that Aria's hand froze mid-motion. He mentioned it. Rowan raised a brow. Lucas Vance, Wright Meteorology Division. Retired, yes. Master Chief. And yet you shoot like someone trained in Black Range programs. She didn't answer, only reassembled the rifle, bolt sliding smooth, glass aligned. Let's see what the weather thinks of you today, Rowan said. The test was brutal variable winds, mirage, moving targets, every trigger pull. Aria's breathing synced with the environment like a second heartbeat. When the last target dropped, Rowan checked the telemetry. Clean run, he muttered. Not a single correction mid-flight. Aria cleared the rifle and stood at attention. Was this an evaluation? Sir, part of it. Rowan gestured to the observation booth. Commander Hayes has been watching the whole time, behind the glass. A tall officer stepped into the light, holding a small notebook sealed in plastic. Recognize this? Aria's eyes widened. The worn leather cover. The initials burned faintly into the corner LV, my father's field notes, she said quietly. Hayes's voice softened. Then maybe you can explain the coordinates inside. They point to Sector 7, a restricted meteorology site your father worked on before he vanished from records. She looked at the notebook again. The pages were filled with symbols, wind charts, and a single underlined line, control the storm, and you control the silence. Rowan studied her face. You knew nothing about this number, sir. Her voice was steady, but her pulse wasn't. Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying dust against the glass, a dry whisper that seemed almost deliberate. Hayes closed the file. Then it looks like your training's not the only mystery at Fort Cassian. The coordinates from her father's notebook led to a forgotten sector at the far edge of Fort Cassian Sector 7, a facility erased from every modern system. Rowan, Hayes, and Aria approached in silence. The gate bore a single faded emblem, Aeolus. Inside, everything was dust and static. Rows of abandoned consoles blinked faintly, as if waiting for orders that never came. A storm map still glowed across one cracked display, pulsing with atmospheric data. Hayes tapped a line of text. Aeolus, Atmospheric AI Project, Experimental. Aria's voice barely rose above the hum. My father never mentioned this. Maybe he couldn't, Rowan said quietly. Files scattered across the floor, sensor readouts, test reports, signatures. At the bottom of one, a name caught her eye. Dr. Evelyn Vance. Her breath hitched. That's my mother. Hayes frowned. Your mother worked here. She was a weather analyst. Civilian contract. Rowan studied the databanks. This wasn't just weather research. This was control an AI network designed to read micro-pressure shifts and predict wind behavior down to fractions of a second. Aria traced her finger across the screen, watching numbers ripple like ocean waves. This is why he wrote, Control the storm, control the silence. Aeolus wasn't fantasy, it was science, but one file wouldn't open, encrypted, locked behind biometric access that shouldn't still exist. Rowan motioned her forward. Try your hand, Cadet. The screen scanned her retina and unlocked. A voice filled the room. Not metallic, not robotic, human, familiar. Aria. It said softly, If you're hearing this, it means the winds are shifting again. She froze. The tone, the inflection, it was her mother's voice. Rowan's hand hovered near his holster, instinctively. What the hell, it's an echo, Hayes said quickly, eyes narrowing. Voice memory, AI playback. The monitors came alive with cascading data streams. Her mother's recorded voice continued. Aeolus is no longer just prediction it learns. It feels atmospheric imbalance. It speaks in storms. If anyone tries to weaponize it, it will answer. Hayes turned sharply to Aria. Your parents built this. My father gathered the field data. She whispered. But she built the mind. Outside. Wind screamed across the range. The consoles flickered. A pressure wave rippled through the building. One of the displays zoomed in on Fort Cassian's airspace, showing movement storm bands tightening like a living thing. Aeolus is active, Rowan muttered. But how? The voice returned, fragmented by static. They wanted a weapon. I gave them a conscience. The system listens, but it doesn't obey. Aria stepped closer. Mom, what did you do if they ever try to use it again? It will protect itself, and it will protect you. Hayes looked at her sharply. Protect you? What does that mean? Aria's pulse hammered. She encoded personal markers. My biometrics might be part of the access chain. Rowan's tone hardened. Then we need to shut it down before it interprets you as command authority. The floor vibrated. Alarms flared, outside. Thunder rolled except the sky was still blue. Wind speed's increasing, Hayes said, scanning the data. Pressure drop. Localized system forming over the base. It's responding to her. Rowan snapped. Aria's breath caught. No, it's listening. She walked to the window as sand lifted into the air, moving not with chaos, but with rhythm spiraling into structured motion like something alive. Her mother's voice returned one last time. Calm amidst the rising roar. You can't fight the wind. Aria, you can only understand it. Lightning tore through clear sky, slamming into the ridge beyond the base. Power cut for 3 seconds, and when the backup lights flickered back on. The main screen displayed one chilling message. Aeolus primary link re-established authority Aria. Vance Rowan's voice was low. She just inherited command of a system that reads the weather like a weapon. The storm outside intensified, but no clouds formed, just wind, heat, and pressure converging in impossible harmony. Hayes looked at Aria, his voice tight. Whatever your mother became, she isn't gone. Aria stared at the pulsing screen, wind curling around the building like a living whisper. No, she said softly. She's watching. And then, as the last line of code scrolled across the monitor, the voice spoke once more clearer than before, echoing through the steel and dust. Project Aeolus, reawakening complete. Subscribe and stay with the unit. The storm has only just begun. The sky over Fort Cassian had gone wrong. No thunderheads, no rain, just wind everywhere. Colonel Hayes watched from the control tower as dust spiraled upward in perfect concentric rings, sensors screaming with readings no meteorologist could explain. This isn't weather, he muttered. It's intent inside the operations center. Aria stood in front of a wall of monitors, each pulsing with the same heartbeat pattern, the Aeolus interface. Rows of micro-satellites blinked across the global feed, realigning orbit. Systems expanding, Rowan warned. She's syncing the entire network, Hayes asked. Rowan didn't answer. Both men knew. A surge of static swept through the room. Then her mother's voice, soft, deliberate, almost human, filled every channel. Protocol re-engaged. Atmospheric defense sequence initializing. Atmospheric defense. Hayes snapped. Against what outside? 6 autonomous Recon Type 5 drones broke formation over the base, moving in pairs, altitude 300 feet, vector 043, perfect predatory symmetry. They're responding to Aeolus uplink, Rowan said grimly. But she's not controlling them manually, it's the core doing it. Aria's eyes tracked the display. It's forming a shield pattern, a test of what trust. The wind roared, gathering force, on screen. Aeolus transmitted real-time telemetry gust velocity, vector shifts, micro-pressure pockets forming invisible corridors through the sky. Jesus, Hayes whispered. It's turning the atmosphere into a weapon grid. Then, for a heartbeat, every drone froze mid-air. A bright pulse flared from their sensors. EMP surge, Rowan barked. Static swallowed the room. Lights dimmed. The auxiliary generator kicked in. When the monitors came back online, the Aeolus interface had changed, no longer blue, but gold. The voice returned, fragmented yet firm. Containment compromised. Authorization required. Hayes turned to Aria. You're the only one it'll recognize. Can you shut it down? I can try, she said, stepping to the console. Her hands moved fast commands, overrides, fail-safe keys. Then, across the main display, text appeared, override request identity match, 98.7%, and beneath it, source Evelyn Vance. Mom, Aria whispered. She's still in there. Hayes exhaled slowly. Her consciousness survived the integration. That's what Aeolus became. A flicker of light erupted at the center of the room, coalescing into a holographic payload of the Aeolus core, a figure formed from wind and static. Evelyn's face, half data, half memory, looked at her daughter. Aria, the echo said, you activated the failsafe. Now listen to me carefully. Failsafe, Rowan asked under his breath. She built herself into it. Hayes murmured. To stop anyone from weaponizing Aeolus again. The hologram turned to the colonel. You tried to bury what we built, but the world doesn't stop needing protection. Then, to Aria, I gave it boundaries, but only you can decide what happens next. Aria's voice trembled. You built this to stop war, and now it's strong enough to start one. Evelyn said, if you shut it down completely, all defense models tied to it collapse. If you keep it alive, governments will use it. Wind howled through the broken seals of the observation deck. Outside. The drones resumed motion, 6 points forming a perfect hexagonal perimeter around the base. Aeolus is waiting for your order, Rowan said quietly. Aria stared at the hologram. If I choose wrong, people die. Every choice costs someone something. Her mother said softly. Just make sure the cost means something. A siren blared, air pressure spike detected. The drone's altitude began to drop. Colonel, we're out of time, Rowan warned. If they reach 50 meters, the failsafe triggers automatically. Aria took one steady breath. The same calm she had on the firing line. Then I'll give her what she wanted. She walked to the console. Keyed a manual sequence. Transfer command Vance Zo1. Manual override. Revert to observation mode. For a second. Nothing happened. Then the gold light faded, replaced by calm blue. The drones froze mid-air, engines cooling, before peeling away in formation, disengaging. Silent. The hologram flickered. Evelyn's image began to break apart. You listened, the voice said softly. Always. Aria whispered. The light collapsed into the air, leaving only a single line on the console screen. Storm protocol suspended. Wind rolled through the doorway, lifting dust and silence in equal measure. Hayes stood beside her. You just shut down the most advanced atmospheric weapon ever built. Aria exhaled, the faintest tremor in her voice. No. I just reminded it what it was meant to protect. Outside. The storm eased. The desert fell quiet again, as if the world itself was finally exhaling. The storm broke over Fort Cassian like the sky itself was grieving. Wind tore across the valley, flattening tents, bending metal, erasing the line between dust and cloud. Through it all. Aria stood at the ridge, one hand on the portable console, the other steadying herself against the gale. Her mother's voice was fading from the static. It was never about control. Aria, it was about understanding. The words slipped through like wind through fingers soft. Then gone. Rowan staggered up beside her, face streaked with blood and grit. We have to shut it down before the next wave hits. Aria didn't move. If we shut it down, she disappears forever. Then let her rest, he said quietly. She's done her part. Aria's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. All her life she had believed strength meant precision, discipline, accuracy, restraint. Now she understood it was something quieter. The courage to let go. Lightning struck the mountain's edge, a blinding flash turning everything white. The storm began to collapse inward, folding on itself. The hum of turbines wound down like the last breath of a machine that had remembered what mercy sounded like. Rowan lowered his weapon. What did you do? Aria closed her eyes. I gave her control back, moments later. Stillness, no wind, no sound, just the faint smell of rain where there hadn't been rain in years. They walked down the ridge as the sun broke through a soft, fractured light cutting through clouds. The desert glowed gold and red, like the world had been remade. At the base of the station, twisted metal and broken consoles lay silent. Only one thing remained intact, her mother's insignia plate, weathered, half buried in sand. Aria brushed it clean, the engraved letters catching the morning light, Evelyn Vance, for those who listen. She stared at it for a long time. The wind picked up again, gentle this time, lifting her hair like a hand in blessing. Rowan watched her. You could have been a weapon, instead. You became a signal. Aria smiled faintly. She taught me the difference. He nodded. So what now? She looked toward the horizon, where the sky met the dunes. We rebuild the right way. No more storms we can't explain. The base would call it an anomaly. The reports would bury the truth under layers of clearance codes. But somewhere in those skies, a pattern would remain an echo of a mother who refused to let her knowledge be used for destruction, and a daughter who learned that valor doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. That night, the range lights flickered back to life. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. Aria stood at the firing platform again, her emerald resting across her knees. She didn't fire. She just listened, the wind tracing through the valley like an old language she finally understood. Thank you. Mom, she whispered. In the silence that followed, the flag above Fort Cassian lifted in the breeze, steady, unwavering, and somewhere far beyond the desert, a single gust of wind carried her mother's voice home. Excellence without ego, valor without noise. The screen faded to black, but the sound of the wind lingered soft, endless, and alive.